Yes, Ariel.
Christopher Hansen moved to Orlando in 2016, looking for love, community, and roots. 2 months later, he found himself in the middle of one of America's worst mass shootings at Pulse nightclub. During this hate crime, he sprung into action and became a hero, saving multiple lives of gunshot victims. Since that time, Hansen has dedicated himself to furthering understanding of the LGBTQ plus community, advocating for equal rights.
Woo! Yes!
Advocating for equal rights and becoming a strong voice for mass shooting victims and survivors. Please welcome Christopher Hansen.
Yes, Christopher! I love this man. Yes, Chris.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out today. My name is Christopher Hansen, and I moved to Orlando in 2016 from Northern Ohio. At the time, I was working in the hospitality industry, and I was looking for a change and hoping to find love, community, and roots. So I ended up moving to Orlando in the spring of 2016. 2 months later, I still didn't really know too many people, so I decided to go out for a night of dancing. I met with a local guy who invited me out to join him for Saturday night for an evening of fun. Before I went out, I went to go see The Conjuring 2, which you probably know is a horror movie based on a true story. Little did I know, hours later, I would be in the midst of my own waking nightmare. When I got to the club, I found out it was Latin night. I felt like I was the only one who didn't understand Spanish. Sorry guys, can you hear me now?
Yes!
As the night went on, I danced, drank, and enjoyed myself alongside many others who told me that it was their first night at Pulse nightclub too. Now the way the club is laid out, there's 3 main areas. There's the main dance floor, the hip-hop room, and the patio. I spent most of my time in the main room on the dance floor. In the hip-hop room, I met Tiara Parker, her 18-year-old cousin, Akira Murray, and their friend Patience Carter. They were at the club celebrating Akira's graduation. She was the top of her class, in fact, valedictorian. I felt instant comfort with Tiara and fell in love with what she was wearing, a black shirt and white jeans. She wowed me. After talking for a moment, I went back to the main room where the show was starting. It was a drag queen who impersonated Jennifer Lopez.
Yes!
I was having such a great time. I leaned against the wall, and that's when I heard 3 booms. I actually danced to the beat of someone's death because I thought those booms were the bass of the music. Then I realized what was going on. The echoing sounds of screams, breaking glass, and smoke filled the air as flashes of light flared from the distance. It was challenging to see in the dark because I didn't have my glasses on. People were rushing towards me, trying to get out. As I was making my way out, I went by the bathroom. I saw people rushing in there to hide. I had been there earlier, and I knew that there was no way out of the bathroom, so I continued to make my way out. As I got to the patio, I remembered pushing against the fence over and over and over again. The fence wasn't going down. And then suddenly there was an opening and I made my way out. I ran to the right, and as I was running, there was someone near the door. I think it was a security guard. I saw him holding a gun and he was yelling at us, "Go, go, go!" I made my way to the opposite end of the outside, and the gunfire paused. As it paused, I looked around me, and there were people on the ground bleeding and needing help. So I turned around and I went back into the war zone. The gunfire started again. The gunfire started again. Pow, 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 pow. Pow, 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 pow. I saw two guys struggling to make their way out towards the hospital, and I noticed one with soaked jeans, and I pressed my hand against his leg. I pulled it back, and it was as if I stuck my hand into a red paint can. I told the guy who was helping the wounded stranger, we need to put him down on the ground. We need to try to stop the bleeding. We laid him on the ground, and that's when I lifted up his shirt, and it looked like bubbling lava as the blood leveled to his body. I took my bandana off of my head that I was wearing under my fedora. I put it into one of the two holes in his body to try to stop the bleeding. He didn't speak English, so I asked the other guy helping him to tell him to keep him calm. We had to keep him level at the curb, and we had to wait for ambulances. At this point, the cops weren't even at the scene yet. As we waited, I remember taking his left hand and holding it in mine as I pressed against the bullet hole with my other hand and prayed that he wouldn't die. I remember at some point turning on my phone. It's a little heavy. Is that better, guys? All right. I remember at some point turning on my phone. I wanted to tell my dad in Arkansas that there had been a mass shooting, but I was alive. My dad picked up and heard all the chaos in the background. I told him, I love you, Dad. I'm okay. He asked me how many people had been shot, and I said, I think maybe 100, but I'm okay. Then my phone went dead, and the sounds of helicopters filled the air. It would be another 24 hours before I could contact my family again. My cell phone had died, and it was going to be a long night before I could charge it. I stayed with the guy for a while, and then the cops finally allowed ambulances in, and eventually they came and picked him up. Then I got up and I turned and I saw a girl in the grass, and she was begging to get out of the grass, but she couldn't move. We told her that we couldn't pick her up and move her because we didn't know if we would injure her more. But she kept begging and said, please, it itches. So we picked her up, and I felt her body going cold. I put her in my lap, and I told the other guy to go help, and I'll stay with her. I would later find out that when I put her in my lap, I had saved her life because, in essence, I became a human tourniquet for her. She was shot in the back, and so my thigh put the pressure on the wound. Enough pressure needed to keep her from bleeding out any more than she already had. She started to fall asleep, so I kept smacking her face. I told her to stay awake. I asked her what her favorite animal was. I asked her what her sign was, where she was born, and she too moved to Orlando from Ohio. Her favorite animal was a lion. Her sign was a Taurus, just like me. She was 19. She was born in 1997. Her name was Kalisha. And she lost her friend Omar Capo that night, and he was 20 years old when he was murdered. We then were told we had to move her to a bagel shop down the block so we could make our way to Einstein Bagels to get her some help. When we got there, we saw men taking all the body boards out of the back of a truck, and they were tagging them black, red, and yellow. The black tags were for those who were dead. The red were for those who needed help immediately, and the yellow were for those who were wounded but didn't need immediate help. I was told by another man later that I helped him too, but I don't remember. It became a blur. I remember after the ambulance helped Kalisha, I went back to help others, and they told me that I had to leave the scene because I wasn't a licensed professional or a first responder. I asked them for gloves because the blood of others were all over my hands and under my nails. They said they didn't have anything more than their own. I felt horrible because I couldn't help anymore. I was told I had to leave, but I had nowhere to go. My keys were in valet. I had no cell phone charger because it was in my car. My credit card was behind the bar. I had no cash. And it was about 10 to 15 minutes away from home by car. Again, in a city I wasn't yet familiar with. I started working my way towards the hospital, because that's where the emergency vehicles were going. As I was walking, there were canines and cops moving everywhere. Then when I heard from the radios on the police officers passing me that the hospital went on lockdown because they thought there was an active shooter there as well, I was scared for my life. I was hot, I was sweating, and I smelled of blood and liquor. Then I noticed to the right of me there was someone limping in the dark, and it happened to be the bartender who served me that night. She had some glass in her foot. I held her hand so tight I didn't want to let go, because she was the only familiar face I remembered at that time. I walked with her until she was reunited with her partner, and she told me to go home and get safe. I couldn't leave because I didn't know where I was. I felt lost, hopeless, and alone. As I was walking, I met a mother of one of the boys who was in the bathroom texting. "Call them, Mommy, now. Tell them I'm in the bathroom. He's coming. I'm going to die." When his mom showed me the text, I knew he wasn't going to make it. He didn't. His name was Eddie Justice. He was 30 years old. He was murdered. I was only 31. Little did I know at the time that those three beautiful girls that I met earlier in the evening in the hip-hop room, Tiara, Akira, and Patience, they had run into the bathroom. All three of them were shot, and Akira, the smartest one in her school, who wanted to only be a criminologist to study how criminals worked, with a full basketball scholarship, would be the youngest fatality of the Pulse nightclub massacre. I would like to acknowledge my dear friend Tiara, who is here today. I love you, Tiara. I'm going to let her come up to the stage with me. This mic is heavy. It has been a challenge for all of us to get back from what happened at Pulse, and we still struggle with everything today, don't we, Tiara? When I was 14 years old, I lived in Cheyenne, Wyoming, near F.E. Warren Air Force Base, where my dad was stationed. April 20th was National Skip Day, and I remember that because my friend wanted me to skip classes with her. I also remember the day very well because that was the day two kids walked into Columbine High School and killed 13 people during my fourth period civics class just before lunch. Immediately after that, my school was on lockdown. It was traumatic. The weeks that followed, we had to use clear backpacks, binders, and all of the teachers had to go outside of their classroom during the breaks between classes. All students had to walk 2 by 2 in single file lines with teachers in the middle, as on each side like a highway, moving like robots in 2 directions. It was my second scare of the year, as my first came from the death of Matthew Shepard, who was an out gay male who was attending Laramie County Community College, which was only 25 minutes from me. He was seduced, lured out of a bar, abducted, beaten, sodomized with the gun that they pistol whipped him with, stripped naked, and tied to a fence post, where they then found him 17 hours later, fighting for his life, when a jogger found him. He was hospitalized, but died 6 days later of his injuries, after being taken off of life support on October 12, 1998. It was challenging for me to be gay at the time, because I was told by a Catholic priest that I could pray my gay away. The priest was 24, only 10 years older than me. He told me that he had thoughts like me too. When he was young, he prayed them away and he joined the church. At the National Cathedral in D.C. during March for Our Lives last month, which Tiara and I both attended, I found out then that there was a vigil held at the same place where we were standing for Parkland less than 2 years earlier. That vigil was for Pulse victims, and it was at that moment that most churches opened up their arms and embraced the LGBT community. In fact, The Pope unfurled the pride flag outside of the Vatican window. What I have been through has changed me. This is why I fight for equality, and this is why I fight for gun violence prevention through the Pride Fund to end gun violence. There was no one for me when I was too scared to come out. There are so many still too scared to come out, and others whose voices have been silenced in different ways through gun violence, either by their own hand or a madman's trigger. So I'm going to ask all of you to raise your voices and join me for standing up for someone. Stand up loud and stand up proud. I will be handing out these ribbons right here, which represent the idea that even though we are broken through war, we can be peace together. Red represents life, orange is healing, yellow is sunshine, green is nature, blue is peace, and purple is spirituality. I would also like to thank my parents and all those who had an opportunity in my upbringing, because I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for them. I was blessed to have 3 parents. Thank you.
In honor of all of the victims that we've talked about, heard about, I would like you to join me in a moment of silence for 2 minutes. You're welcome to raise your fist in solidarity.